Hello and welcome to the Holistic Psychiatrist podcast, where we're always building well-being from the thought up. I'm Alice Lee. I'm your host. I'm a holistic psychiatrist practicing in Lehigh, Utah. And today I have a special guest, our tried and true Jack Rome. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about him, actually. He's been in the background supporting my podcast. He's been helping me to be able to create podcasts that would flow a little bit easier because he has this positive energy about him that allows me to just kind of open up and talk about things in a very easy way. And so anyways, the reason why I'm having Jack on our show as the focus of our podcast today is because we had a very interesting conversation after our last podcast in which we talked a little bit about the changes that he has gone through over the last 4 years since working with me. So let me tell you a little bit about Jack. Jack is a music producer. He's a digital media artist. He's a writer and editor, but he wants me to tell you that you can call him a hyper creator. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jack as to what he means by that and maybe have him, insert some comments here at this point.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's fun to be in the hot seat, so to speak, this time. I feel like I've never had the opportunity to do that on this podcast with you. So this is a special one. Hyper creator. The reason why I'm using that term first and foremost is because as you just were trying to do, to list all the different things I do, it gets to a point where it's kind of ridiculous to try to list all the different hats that I might wear. And I'm not the only one. There are so many like me that wear so many multiple hats, so many different hats with multiple skill sets like I do. I like to think that I have a unique approach to my way of doing things, but that's where hyper creator comes from. It comes from me wanting to have one word that can both encapsulate everything I do while also leaving the openness and the question of like, wait, but then what is it that you do? So that somebody has to actually work with me or has to actually like listen to my music or watch my videos or read my writing in order to actually understand what it means for like what I actually do. That way, when the question is answered, it can't be answered in like, oh, well, I do this, and this. But instead, it's more like, well, I'm a hyper creator. If you want to find out what that means, go to my website, check it out. Go to jackintheway.me and check out the website. And that way, there's something beyond words that is experienced in order to understand what it is even that I do. That being said, I have no problem with, I am a digital media artist. I am, a writing coach. I am a website helper person. I do all the IT stuff. But I really like this idea of a term that is almost like an anti-term. Like it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do, which a lot of terms we have for ourselves, like we have all these labels that kind of, they're meant to like tell someone what we do without showing them. And I really love the idea of using a term that forces me to show someone what I do. And then the other aspect of hyper creator, and this has to do with stuff that may not come up here, but if somebody listening is interested, they can learn more about it elsewhere, related to work I'm doing with the blockchain technology as a musician and as an artist. And when it comes to hyper, like the word hyper, it has to do with the fact that I'm creating things that can live on with or without me, that are created by me or created with me, as we'll talk about. So more like I witness their creation, but then because of that, they can live on without me. They don't need me in order to exist in the world. So I release a song, the song can be listened to whether I'm here to play it or not. There are ways for people to experience my creations and my work without me needing to directly monitor them. And so that's what being a hyper creator means in that sense.
I see. So when you said to say call him at Hypercreator. It's not at Hypercreator.
Oh yeah.
I'm supposed to call you the Hypercreator, right?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm a hyper creator.
Oh,
Yeah.
a
And it
Hypercreator.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's a term that's like very new. Like I not to say I'm the one who came up with it. I would say maybe
Mhm.
I'm the one who coined it, because there's a
Mm.
term called hyperstructure, which is
Okay.
meant to be like structures in society, etc., that once created can run themselves, that they don't need
Oh,
people to run them for them, which is such a beautiful concept, because the
yeah.
idea that we could relax and not have to be so controlling about everything of the way things work. I take that approach, but to creativity. So
I see.
in such as hyper creator.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But to reach you, though, they need to go to jackintheway.me.
Yes. You got it.
Okay. All right. So let it be known. jackintheway.me to reach Jack.
Yeah.
And so for those people who want to reach me, I'm at holisticspsychiatrist.com. So I hope you can go there as well
Mm-hmm.
if you like our content. So today we're really talking about change and influence and positive change, positive influence, those kind of things. Let's take off where we were having our conversation last time at the end of our podcast and
Yeah.
just share with the audience what had happened. So, so at the end of our last podcast, I was saying, Jack, you're so positive. I really enjoy working with you. And, I think I threw out the comment that I thought you've always been really spiritual, right? You have this
Right.
little Zen halo around your head. But then you told me, oh, no, that's not true. And so you corrected me. So tell me a little bit about that part of the conversation when you were,
Mm,
trying to clarify the
mm,
changes you had seen in yourself over the last 4
mm,
years.
mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing how as a sort of a module for time, like us working these last 4 years is so closely resembles a particular, you might say, spiritual journey I've been on.
Mm-hmm.
So we started working together in 2018. I remember it. I remember that interview that we had was May
Okay.
2018, when I just came into when you're still in Maryland,
Yes.
and I sat down with you, and I just had my little laptop out, and I was like, what is this going to be? I don't know. And it
Uh-huh.
was all through Nextdoor, that app.
Yeah.
Um,
Nextdoor.com.
yeah. Thank you, Nextdoor.
Yeah.
And you know, in one sense, like when you say you've always been this way, in one sense I have, but I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
It would any times where I would be really positive or aligned or whatever, what have you, however you want to put it, it would always be in spite of the identity that I thought I had, that I needed to have. It would be like what was underneath the surface of all these layers of ego, identification, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in these last 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely in no small part to the work that we've done together, and
Mm-hmm.
my exposure to the work that you do. It's not necessarily the kind of thing where, in when you say like we work together, it's funny because like normally when you say we work together, you're talking about you and your patients, and it's such a
Mm-hmm.
different dynamic between the two of us, because I'm a freelancer, like I'm in essence consulting for you and with you on your
Mm-hmm.
work. And
Mm-hmm. And
nevertheless,
and by
yes,
the
yeah,
way, for the audience, just so they know if they
yeah,
haven't actually ever listened to one of our podcasts before, so Jack was interviewed by me at the beginning because I needed his help to get my website
yeah,
back on track with all
yeah,
of those holistic updates because uh, for lots of different reasons, I wasn't able to get it out every week like a holistic update. And I'd gone to a, write your own book kind of conference, and they said, you really should
okay,
have some kind of blog every week. And so I said, I got to do this blog every week, but I need help on the digital website end. So I put out an ad for someone to help me with that. And Jack, you were one of the earliest people to say, me, I'll help. And so you came in, and at the time you looked like a samurai warrior because you came in with a big bun on your head because you were growing your hair out to donate your hair to what was it? The organization?
I think it was Locks for Love. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I still had another year or so to go where I was
Oh,
still going to
okay.
be growing it.
Yeah,
So yeah, I was
yeah,
really growing it
yeah,
then.
yeah, yeah. So it was really long, and I was like struck with just that bun on your head. I was like, okay, do people with buns on their head, are they reliable? I'd never encountered that question before. Anyways, you sounded really perfect for the job, and we started working together.
Mm,
Um, and you worked to help me with grammar, editing. You uploaded everything. What I loved about you was, whatever I was writing, you could totally like improve upon and do a great
mm,
job with. And so
mm,
if it was really polished up on the website, it was because it went through your filter.
mm-hmm,
Okay, so
mm-hmm.
back to you. And so what
Yeah.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I really
Mhm.
appreciate you giving these like extra details to like fill in the gaps because it's nice for me to be able to hear again, like I feel
Oh,
like a story's being told to me.
uh-huh.
Um yeah, so at that point, I think you've mentioned before about this is definitely I definitely am remembering correctly when I say that you've mentioned my positive energy here and there. I think
Hmm.
one at least once over the last
Yeah,
4 years.
yeah,
um,
definitely.
and I think from the very beginning, and this kind of goes to what I was saying about the effect that through our working partnership, relationship, collaboration um, has allowed for. Even though when you say working together, it's like I'm not a patient. I'm like doing work for you as
Hmm.
sort of in all the different ways that we've talked about. Nevertheless, there's an impact on me by just being in the same space, mental space, working area as you. And it started from the very beginning, really, because what I can see is that, like, when I, went in for that interview and then we had, that the next in June 2018, that's when we started really doing it, as you were just describing. That gave me the opportunity to embody a role that I was really, in many ways, I would say, both, if you want to say born to, or at least conditioned to, or at least there's this term called Ikigai, which is when the thing you love to do, the thing that makes you feel good, things that the world actually needs from you, things you can get paid for, all kind of come together in a beautiful way. That
Mm.
was an experience that I had of that alignment.
Hmm.
And that's what it was, a mixture of what you needed in that moment, also what your work offered, like the actual content of what you were writing about, of course, and we can talk more about that. That kind of came together in such a way that what it asked of me, like,
Hmm.
if we want to get really spiritual about it, like what the universe, what God, what myself, what the deepest part of me was asking of me in that moment, was to not really pretend, actually, so much as peel back the unnecessary layers and embody who it is I really deserve to be, which is someone who is able to consult on important matters that are really mean a lot to you in our case, in a way that is authentic, in a way that is sincere, in a way where I understand what it takes to be someone who's an independent um, business owner, really, in many ways, but is
Hmm.
also a creative,
Hmm.
doing that kind of stuff. And so it was the first experience I had to like bring a lot of experience that I'd had as that kind of person into a setting where I'm really conditioned for this. Like I'm meant for being able to support and consult on things like exactly what we've done. And it led to so many other, opportunities, relationships that I've had with people that all really started through word of mouth from that first like experience we had in Maryland, when you were still in
Hmm.
Maryland.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's because of that. It's because that from the very beginning, I felt open to a part of myself that deserved to be seen and deserved to like operate in the world, that
Hmm.
I then like, and we can go in and talk about this because I'll
Hmm.
land the plane now.
Hmm.
Of
Hmm.
sort of being willing step by step to be open to new ideas, new perspectives, and new things that I could incorporate into my understanding of myself as a human being, as a spiritual
Hmm.
being.
Well, what's important though was that it seemed to flow pretty naturally for you, meaning that I never really sensed from you a certain sense of cynicism or
Mm,
ridicule or
mm,
closeness, um, being closed off, I mean,
mm-hmm,
um, in terms
mm-hmm,
of the ideas I was trying to write about in the holistic update. So I
mm-hmm.
think that's why I always assumed that that was always where you were coming from. I think what was really interesting to me was that the spirituality that I felt was so much an innate part of you. You were saying that when you first started, I think you said you were atheist. Was that right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Agnostic at best,
Oh, okay,
but
okay.
agnostic atheist for sure.
Hmm.
Yes, definitely.
And since my work is very kind of like spiritually enmeshed in some way
Mm-hmm.
or and buried in that soil, um, I just wondered how that shifted for you. How in the world
Yeah,
did you go from being an
yeah,
atheist to where
yeah.
you are right now? Because you're teaching me a lot. Like sometimes you'll refer me to some books that are really spiritual, or like certain things that
Yeah.
you wanted me to read, and I just thought that that was just your like forte.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a great question. Well, yeah, definitely was agnostic atheist. Um, I would say like if I was an atheist, and if you asked me more questions, I'm agnostic
Okay.
at the time.
Hmm.
And in some ways, I guess I'm still agnostic, but not really. It's like I'm agnostic in the sense that I've made myself more comfortable with uncertainty about everything. Um,
Hmm.
but that goes beyond agnosticism, because I wouldn't actually describe myself that way.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think, well, to speak to the lack of cynicism you felt, despite
Okay.
knowing that now that like kind of where my spiritual bent was at the time, or
Hmm.
lack thereof, I think it's because I've always carried a sense of spirituality, even though I went through phases of my life where I tacked on to people's atheisms and things, where I was like, that makes sense. Like, yeah, religion's terrible. Like I just didn't understand. I didn't have the actual experience of um I hadn't had a spiritual mystical experience yet that I could actually point to and
Hmm.
understand was integral to myself as a human. And
Hmm.
that being said, it's not like it wasn't there. And
Hmm.
so, to give you an example, like when I was learning about from you, like learning about, and I say learning about, but just reading your writing about energy work and about muscle testing and about energy breaths, I just had this sense of, I do not know what goes into this. I don't know how, if, why it works. I don't know anything about this, but I know that this person has patience and she's doing this work and she's writing about this. And I trust that. I may
Hmm.
not know all of it, and or be able to explain it to anybody I know, but I trust that there is something to this, because she's writing about it. She's taking the time to write about it. She has tons of patience. And so I think it always came from a place of faith. Like I just, so even before I knew I had the faith, I had the faith.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
was from the beginning.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wonderful. Um, so in terms of your, okay, once you got exposed to that, of course, you started learning more as you were, correcting my grammar. And oh, comma needs to be taken out here, and another comma here. You got to take that out. Anyway, I had so many commas before, right? Before, after every
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
before every and. Anyways, so you were correcting my grammar and and reading my articles, um, and I guess when did you start actually pursuing it on your
Mm.
own? Like,
Mm.
gathering some books and reading about
Mm-hmm.
that, or starting to meditate more, or whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
you started to initiate because
Mm-hmm.
you decided you wanted to explore it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great question, because that didn't come in 2018. That
Okay.
We worked together for about a year and a half before I I would say I had an opening experience.
Okay.
I will say, and this is something I'm so glad to be able to share now, because I feel like this is the time when you're interviewing me
Okay.
um, about this. But a big part of, and this actually, I think my first time was in 2018, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken. Yeah, late 2018.
okay.
Um, but my mystical experiences that I had that were both, sometimes I utilized psychedelics to experience them. Sometimes it
Mhm.
was more through like meditation or skateboarding or making music and things like that. But
Mhm.
I had a couple um, really just like grounding psychedelic experiences over the course of 2018 to 2019 that
Mhm.
then led up to an experience that I had reading the book Be Here Now by Ram Dass,
Uh,
which, if you look back there, I have the cover on the wall.
uh-huh.
Um, I probably don't feel quite as much of like a connection to that book as I did at the time, but
Okay.
that's where it really happened. Was I had always had sort of through therapy, like I did a lot of ACT therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, which is like based in mindfulness, which is based in Buddhism. So from
Okay.
a young age, when I was like 10 years old, having trouble going to sleep at night, I was exposed to a certain type of spirituality through the therapy that I went through. I just
Mhm.
didn't get it. I didn't, I mean, I
Okay.
was 10.
Mhm.
But it was always with me as like this kind of like, in some ways, like a sleeping giant. Like once it was
Mm.
awoken, once my spirituality was awakened, it would
Mhm.
really just flourish. And it
Mhm.
and it really, the way it played out, I don't know if it necessarily would have had to go this way, but the way it played out is I needed the psychedelic experiences to be able to just witness this awareness within myself, this absolute being of like absolute love, undeniable. No matter how much doubt I bring to it, it just like evaporates in front of it. It was just the most
Wow.
amazing thing. And I remember looking in the mirror and just being like, oh, during these experiences, just being like, oh, like you look so just like worn down and beaten up, and who's been abusing you? And it
Wow.
was like this question of like this part of me that just was coming to me as my caretaker, just saying like, what has happened to you? And I
Aw.
realized, oh, I just what I didn't know that I was beating myself up in this way. I just didn't know,
Oh.
because I didn't know that I was my own caretaker. And so then I
Oh.
read Be Here Now. That put things into
Mhm.
perspective for me. Be Here Now is sort of a text. I would say it's a text for, in my mind, it's a text for people that have, whether it's a psychedelic experience or something similar where it's like, what the heck is going on?
Mhm.
It really, like, it doesn't ground you necessarily, but it just opens you to how to depict what you've experienced if you're willing to
Mhm.
go toward the spiritual route. And
Mhm.
so I really needed it. And that
Mhm.
was in 2019, December, right before the pandemic. So
Can
that
we
was
pause
when,
there?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's a beautiful experience to be able to step out of your daily life and be that divine caretaker of your life and be able
Yeah.
to start to see um, yourself with such unconditional love and compassion. So that experience, I'm sure, is very valuable. But I think also you have a hard time telling me that because you know how I am with any kind of substances.
Sure. Yeah.
So you like people don't want to tell me certain things, even for my patients, because they kind of see me as this little pure white. Little angelic halo person who never touches substances or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you sharing that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lovely experience. I actually had something kind of similar only
Mm.
once in my life, and
Mm.
that was when I bothered to reread a whole bunch of my old journals.
Oh.
And I had kept a journal ever since I was about 13. I just never, I
Mm-hmm.
just write it down. It just kind of like just vent, and then just
Yeah.
when it's vented it's gone. I don't
Yeah.
even read it. But anyways, one day I decided to kind of pull out some old journals. I went through a bunch of them, and I started to cry at the end because I was
Mm.
able to perceive myself from another angle, almost as if
Mm-hmm.
myself were a different person,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
could touch that unconditional love for that person because I could
Mm,
see all of the different nuances that that person did
yeah.
not see when
Yeah.
writing about
Yeah.
herself. Yeah,
Yes.
so I appreciate you sharing that beautiful spiritual experience with us.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a pivotal shift for you.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. And it was, I think the reason why it was so astounding to me is because it's not like I hadn't had some amount of love for myself.
Hmm.
Um but to be able to have experience it in a way that was so momentary, like I didn't need the past to experience the love, which oftentimes, like in my regular waking state, this is why I write so much, is because it helps me, as you were just describing. But it was like, it was such a mystical experience of unconditional love, in the way that in the moment, as I was in this body, in this form, on this day and this month, this year, I had the perspective of this being watching Jack. And
Mm.
since that time,
Hmm.
I've been I've basically been constantly either it, working to build that bridge as much as possible, or so disappointed that I haven't built the bridge as well as I wanted, that I plunge into depression again, which has happened
Oh.
cyclically. And I will say, I think it's my ego learning to let go of the depression, of the separation from that
Mm.
loving
Hmm.
being. And
Hmm.
it's just like, it's on a cycle. It's just, this is a spiral, and I'm just kind of
Hmm.
keep going
Hmm.
and keep going. But yeah, and so it really was that. And then up until that period, December 2019, right before COVID, the pandemic, when I read that book, and that
Hmm.
opened me up. And so during COVID, which we definitely met and stuff, of course,
Hmm.
here and there, but mostly virtually. But
Hmm.
during that time where I didn't really have anywhere to go, as many of us did as a performer,
Hmm.
um, I basically, like, I now have like a library of these books, and those are some of the ones I recommend to you, where I
Hmm.
basically put myself through like a 6 month unofficial, like, independent study graduate program, where it was like,
Hmm.
if I went to graduate school, this is what I'd be studying. I'd be studying spirituality in all these different ways. I'd
Wow.
be studying mystical spirituality. I'd be studying how every single spiritual path is leading up the same mountain, and the top looks the same no matter where you're at. So
Hmm.
it all leads to the same place. And
Hmm.
I've been studying that. I studied that really intensely. I stopped working on music for the most part. I really focused on that, and meditation and
Hmm.
yoga and all these different things that I could try out for
Hmm.
a period of time. And that, as I listened to people, it just opened me more and more and more.
I see.
Um, it started with as I was reading Be Here Now, being like, wow, this feels true, but like, I don't know if I could believe in God like this guy does, though.
Hmm.
And it was, it was like, that was one limitation, like
Hmm.
that feeling like I couldn't let go of a belief, or
Hmm.
disbelief.
Hmm.
And then I opened, and then I was like, oh, I understand now. Oh, I see. God is just a name for this.
Hmm.
um and it was just one thing after another, and I read books from different spiritual traditions, and it kind of brought this puzzle together, and showed me, is showing me still, like, what there is to be experienced in this moment. So from a mystical perspective, mystical in terms of like everything that people talk about in scripture and everything is true right now, for me right now, for you right now. Like it,
Hmm.
like the I have another book that I came across about a year later, in late 2020, that, or not just book, but set of teachings from Neville Goddard, who we've talked about before on the podcast, even, where he talked about how your imagination creates reality. And and it wasn't until that point that it really clicked for me. All of your work clicked in.
Oh.
Once I understood that, from a level that I had never perceived before,
Hmm.
that imagination creates reality, that my imagination creates my subjective reality completely. Like, there are other forces at play, but ultimately those forces are still part of my imagination. Once I understood that, I understood, as the catchphrase of this podcast, well-being from the thought up. It's the
Hmm.
thought. And that really, really opened me up, because not only did it open me up to imagination creates reality, and how to understand reality, and my role in it, and wake me up a little bit to mechanisms of this dream that I'm in. But it also opened me up to like the Judeo-Christian traditions, because Neville Goddard constantly used the Bible as his main spiritual text for explaining the teachings. And he explained it as like, Christ is all of us. Christ is you. Christ is me. Christ is the imagination part. Like the part of my psychology that is imagining and creating things is Christ, aka God. And so like that is eternal. That never goes away. It will be here forever. The body can die. It doesn't matter. Imagination continues. And yeah,
Question about Neville Goddard.
sure.
Around what year, around what period of time did he write all his stuff?
Yeah, it was between like the maybe late 1920s, but especially like the 40s, 50s, 1940s, 50s.
Yeah, because there's another writer, Ernest Holmes, who wrote The Science of Mind, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago he wrote The Science of
Yeah.
Mind. And it was a book that was recommended to me when I first started working with a Reiki master who was trying to teach me energy medicine. And also Ernest Holmes is kind of like Neville Goddard in the sense that he was trying to use the scriptures as a way to illustrate how the mind creates, you know, and how the mind heals.
Yes, right. Yeah, and obviously healing's a huge part of it. That's how it. Then I realized, oh, of course this would be used for healing. Like, why wouldn't it be if someone opens to this? And that's when it really all clicked in terms of our work together. I was like, oh, I understand now all of why this works, and it all just like made so much sense, all in one like sweep. It was kind of amazing, and I was like, wow, now I really feel like I was always doing my best, but now like I feel like not only am I doing my best to like help you with your message and everything like that, but it also is like now I'm really aligned with it, like from a personal place, you know, which is really nice.
And that was in 2020?
20. Yep.
Okay.
2020.
Okay.
Yeah. Late 2020. About a year after I read Be Here Now, then Neville Goddard and those teachings were kind of my next step. Yeah. And so, and I think it really helped me heal my own, my own sort of just hesitancies sort of thing. Like I was very hesitant to go into the spirituality that I, kind of, you know, my ancestry is Christian and Jewish. So like that area of spirituality, I was just so used to it being a particular religious way. And so having Neville's teachings opened me up to the mystical interpretation, so that it's Christian mysticism, not Christianity like that is, you know, the religion of Christianity that is an infrastructure and institution today. It's Christian mysticism that is eternal, that it doesn't matter who's talking about it. It will always be here regardless, in the same way as Jewish mysticism and everything, all of it, all the mysticisms. And so then a year later ish, about in 2021, at the end of 2021, I think I had been going in and out of understanding how imagination creates reality, and I was having a lot of tough moments with myself. Like what was nice is now I was opened up to, you know, everything that we were talking about. Now I was like, I felt like I went from being able to just be somebody who is helping you with like grammar to being able to actually talk to you about these things on your podcast. Not just ask you questions and just go down the list of things you want to answer, but I can come up with questions myself in the moment, because I'm invested from a spiritual place in what you're doing. And I think that was huge. And that kind of took place over the course of 2021. I got more and more comfortable being able to talk about these things, and take a little bit of, you know, take a bit of responsibility over them, because like now they're impacting my life. And so if they're impacting my life, then it's only right that I allow them to impact the people's lives around me. And a part of that is obviously talking about what we do. And that's what you do as well. So that was big. And then I will say, this year, 2022, just to bring it all the way up to now to finish up this little chapter here, I have gotten to a point now where the book that I'm reading right now came from recommendations basically in David R. Hawkins's books. David R. Hawkins actually I was reading David Hawkins' book, and he was talking about muscle testing, and he
Mhm.
talked about the reports that he wrote about muscle testing. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is huge. And I didn't know all this time. So things have
Mhm.
continued to fall into place for me.
Yeah, he wrote that
But
book,
yeah,
Power versus Force.
power versus force. And then
Yeah.
letting go, The Pathway to Surrender is the other one that I've read recently that
Mhm.
really opened me up to like really making good on all the things I had been learning, to really
Mhm.
refine it so that I really understand it even
Mhm.
more, to the point that I can let it go as he talks about. Um and so currently where I'm at now is reading A Course in Miracles, which was
Mhm.
recommended by him, kind of not
Mhm.
overtly, but he just talks about having read A Course in Miracles and having worked through it. And it's a hefty book. I don't know if I've ever read a book this long, which I'm actually listening to it, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to appreciate the content of A Course in Miracles, which uses so much Christian terminology, if I hadn't had these previous years of experiences. And to bring it to kind of our conversation today, because that's kind of the story of how I got here, but
Mhm.
like our work together has been so integral to that, because it's allowed me to put into practice what it is that I'm learning. Of
Mhm.
course, I can put it into practice in my own life in terms of, like I have my meditation seat over there, or doing my reading, or what have you. But it's different when we're really doing work professionally together that utilizes a lot of these concepts for the benefit of humanity. And
Mhm.
that experience has shown me, like, more than anything, I think, how it impacts people around me and how I'm impacted by people around me in relation to these concepts.
Yeah, I was really impressed when you told me one day that you do the EET, the Empower Energy
Yeah.
Technique, on a regular
Yeah.
basis. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, Jack does the EET technique more than I do it on myself. So I better get on the ball and start working on it. And then I found a way to actually do the EET on a regular basis finally.
Oh,
And so
great.
I got to share this with you and with whoever's listening right now. So I I'm going to write about it in my holistic update very soon. But I found a way to exercise while standing still and do my EET at the same
What?
time. Exercise for the lazy. Anyways, um, so I am using a vibration plate. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's really great.
what?
So it's a vibration plate. It was created, I think, like many years ago, maybe 40 years ago. They
Okay.
had Russian astronauts out in outer space that needed something to help them maintain muscle mass
Oh,
and bone density. So
oh.
the Russians created the vibration plate. But, anyways, eventually it trickled into the US over the last few decades, and it's becoming much more mainstream. But
Mm.
I was open to it because my daughter gave me a gift a certificate to a uh, like a spa for a
Mm.
facial, and I had extra money, and so I used that money for quote stretch therapy, but it was really kind of like using a massage gun. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
they were like trying to break up whatever connective tissue that wasn't, like formed properly, and trying to like improve your posture and all those kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
which I really
Mm-hmm.
need because I'm always sitting hunched over, and like
Mm, mm,
this therapist was trying to get my shoulders back and stuff like that.
mm.
Anyways, but it was kind of unpleasant because the massage gun like really hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I saw this thing of the vibration plate, and I was thinking that's kind of like the massage gun, which I bought but never used. And so I bought I bought these vibration plate. And so
Mm.
I what it does is it kind of rocks like a seesaw, and you stand
Okay.
there, and it kind of the vibration goes all the way through your body. And what it does is it causes your muscles to contract and release many, many times in 1 second. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're actually exercising, but all you have to do is really stand there. You could do some other movements if you want,
Sure.
which just accentuates the usefulness of the vibration plate. But what
Wow.
happened was the other day, now instead of one vibration plate, I have four. in my house. Because
Nice.
I was
Like
like
in
one on
different
each
rooms
floor.
or?
Yeah, in different
Yeah.
rooms, different floors. Anyways,
Wow.
so one day I was like standing on my vibration plate, and right in front of me was this bulletin board with the EET technique in front of me. And so I just like, okay,
Oh,
right there, it's right in front of me. I'm like
yeah.
exercising
Better
on my
do it.
vibration plate. So I was doing my EET. And so this is great because I love my vibration plate. It really is.
Oh.
They say it's really good for mood because it increases serotonin and norepinephrine. It's good for
Mm.
bone density. It's good for muscle coordination, balance, anti-aging. It's good for the lymph, of course, good for the
Mm.
cardiovascular system.
Mm.
So really, for very little effort, you can get yourself jump started in a
Yeah.
good direction with your health. So I'm
Wow.
standing there, I'm doing my EET. I think it's going to work. This is going to be my routine.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, had to take a second to write down vibration plate. I had never
Hmm.
heard of those. Wow.
Yeah, they're actually surprisingly affordable. So my favorite one is actually only 100 and, well,
Oh,
not only, but it's about
yeah, yeah,
$140.
yeah.
But, if you think about each spa visit for the stretch therapist is like 45 bucks,
Right.
pretty
Yeah,
soon
yeah.
it pays itself.
Yeah, how often you
So
use it, it's
yeah,
worth it. I mean,
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
any great activity that's also
Yeah,
healing
but
for
it
you.
does feel like a massage going through the body. So it feels great
Oh,
while
yeah,
you're doing something good for your body.
yeah.
And because it kind of gives you energy at the end of your vibration session, and usually the vibration sessions are like 10 to 15 minutes. It's not like
Okay,
long. You don't have to
okay.
do it for
Yeah.
very long. But they say like, I don't know if it was 10 or 15 minutes of the vibration plate exercise session is equal to an hour of weightlifting, is what they said.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Just
whatever
yeah.
it is, yeah, I'm reading a whole book on it, and
Mm,
I'm gonna once I finish reading the book, I can
cool,
condense it into my little holistic
cool.
update. But that's going back
Wow.
to the whole trying to find a way where I can have a routine that I love,
Yeah,
do my EETs. Yeah, and one of my
yeah.
EETs, my Empower Energy Technique statements today was to have a successful podcast with you this
Ah,
morning. So
yay.
I think it's helped.
As we are. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm definitely going to look into that cuz I can imagine it being, beyond as a way to get exercise, also a way for your whole body to be activated as you say the EET. Like,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. And I've been thinking about I remember speaking about it to you at one point, like experimenting with walking while I'm doing it, like walking outside and just having a moment where it's quiet and I'm alone where I can
Hmm.
say it. But I love the idea of that. And it reminds me of, so my parents are moving over the next few months. And there was one thing that I brought into my apartment, which was this like mini trampoline. And it is
Oh,
so great to have in here. It is
okay.
just so
Yeah,
amazing because you just bounce. And when you said,
exactly.
releasing serotonin, norepinephrine, etc., like I was like, that must be similar to it. It's like you get this
Exactly.
feeling like you're bouncing,
Yeah,
but your whole
exactly.
body's bouncing. So
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
definitely going to look into that because I think that would be amazing. And it's just
Yeah.
something I could just have right behind me in here under the desk or something.
Yeah,
So
it's actually quite small,
okay,
and it's very compact, and you can move it
cool,
around in different places in your apartment whenever you want. So
cool.
I already bought
Wow.
one for my brother. So in
Oh,
essence, I've
nice.
bought in the last couple months, I bought five
That's
vibration
great.
plates because each
That's
time I
great.
think, oh, maybe this one's better, maybe this one's better. But
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
the cheaper one, the one that's 140, is actually my favorite. So
Mm, okay.
yeah. The other
Okay.
thing I
Making a
wanted to
note.
mention, as you were talking, Jack, was how reciprocal it is. How, like we're talking about influence and how
Mm,
people influence each other, but like I was just appreciating how it's always a circle. Like,
mm,
I might be influencing you in a positive way, but definitely you've influenced me in a positive way because so many of our productions, whether it's a podcast or holistic update, would not have happened without that positive energy that you
mm,
infuse
mm.
into my work to make it
Mm.
possible. Because I remember for the podcast, for a while, I was writing down what I wanted to say, and then I would then record it on
Right.
the whatever venue it was on Zoom or whatever, and then Mark Ronick would then edit it. But it was very effort. It was like very difficult for me to kind of just sit there alone, talking into thin air, recording
Mm.
this thing. But when we were able to kind of like banter back and forth and talk about certain principles, it was definitely much more feasible, a lot easier for me to kind of talk about different concepts that way. Whereas, just writing something down, reading it out just wasn't working for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that all of these things it's kind of like a circle where it's a reciprocation of, the positive energy, positive support in our relationship. But we can, think about how it might be like a spiritual principle that
Mm.
there's like no relationship really where if you're giving out something positive, it's only one-sided. Like
Mm.
in the past, for example, with my patients, I thought it was one-sided because, yeah, sure, they pay for their services, but I thought that was all I was getting from the interaction. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever I work with a patient, what I realized over the years is that anytime I do energy work to help the patient, that positive energy is flowing through me.
Yes.
And I'm kind of accidentally and unintentionally benefiting from their
Yes.
healing process.
Yes.
So I could not have evolved as a person had I not had them in my life
Mm-hmm.
to, focus my energies on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I mean, I first of all completely agree, not just in theory, but I agree in experience that I've
Okay.
definitely experienced much of what you're saying after our sessions together, where I feel better about myself
Hmm.
after having, worked with you. And this was, from the very beginning.
Wow.
But as you were speaking, I was thinking, in my head, I was like, to give is to receive, of course, that is it.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, and maybe not beyond that, there's the, like, as you heal, as you help others heal themselves, you're healing yourself.
Right.
And to take, especially, I feel like I can take the time to say it because you're interviewing me this time.
Okay.
But in terms of like it, something that I've been learning, especially over the last like 3 to 6 months, I'd say maybe year, but definitely
Hmm.
very recently,
Okay.
is how to take that literally. To give is to receive, and how to take, as you heal others, or as others are healed, so are you healed, and how to take that so literally, in the
Hmm.
sense that, like, you and we might be speaking on different parts of the country,
Hmm.
through a computer. We are not separate. We are not
Hmm.
an inherently separate being. We're actually inherently together as a being. And
Hmm. Yeah.
so from that perspective, of course, if you get a certain amount of positivity out of experience of us working together, so would I.
Mm.
It's like, it's almost
That's
ridiculous
true.
to think otherwise. The only way that it would be possible for me not to experience that positivity is if I blocked myself from it, if I held
Hmm.
on to my separation. Though,
Hmm.
of course, through our work, we've, both your work and what you do, and then my own spiritual journey, it's been a process of getting rid of the separation. And you
Hmm.
actually use the process of getting rid of separation as a way to heal. And I guess,
Hmm.
for me, it's like, I'm not as obviously as practiced in the area of healing work itself. Nevertheless, the healing still happens. It's like the healing happens regardless, and it's up to us to allow
Yeah.
it to happen. And I think
Yeah.
I have my ways of allowing it, and I would say you have your ways of, like, you, like, really hone it. You have like a craft of it. You've built a craft of allowing healing to happen, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that I've definitely healed from over the years. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just really super grateful. Just recently, I had another big breakthrough. I am not going to tell you what it was. 'Cause- okay, I will. Maybe not. Oh, my God. I don't know. All right. Um, because of some experiences I've had recently, I had to address this one very long problem I've had ever since I was a child, and that was my conflict with accepting myself and my appearance. So whether it was,
Mm.
growing up in Utah where everyone was Caucasian, whether it was some of the experience that I had in my family where I was uncomfortable with my appearance, whatever it was, there were a lot of, a confluence of things. But
Mhm.
I had this very conflictual relationship with my appearance where I couldn't acknowledge the good parts, and I didn't want the bad parts, but I also needed the bad parts, like it
Mm.
was like
Mm.
a very weird relationship. And more recently, I had some breakthroughs with that where I was able to heal from very long years of dysfunction where, for example, I would block any kind of true experience of receptivity or openness if anyone complimented me, for example,
Mm.
on my appearance, because I could not see anything good about my
Mm.
appearance. And in
Mm.
fact, it was a little threatening to even think that there was anything good about my.
Mm.
So it was a
Mhm.
kind of a weird relationship. And I think over the years, again, through my work with other patients' self esteem issues, helping them to be compassionate towards themselves, helping them to have confidence in themselves, as I was kind of giving out all of these things to my patients to help them have self acceptance and to be more confident in their own bodies. Um, I think it just kind of healed me. And
Mm.
just recently I had this breakthrough, and it's about time because I'm almost 60, right? Pretty soon, pretty soon, anyways, we won't go there, but anyways, the life is going, and it's about
Yeah.
time for me to get over some of these big humps.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so that, um, it's a constant journey of just appreciation for all of the shifts and things that can come from this connection that we have with each other, the benefits that we have from helping each other.
Mhm.
It's a really good segue to that article that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
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 So recently, in my email, I get this email every now and then called Nice News because it has nice news. And the news actually is relevant. It's not like, oh, somebody helped their dog cross the street or something like that. It's like
Yeah.
interesting news. And so there was an article that came out about research and the impact of acts of kindness. And so hopefully when we get this podcast out, I'll put the link to that article. But it's the website is nicenews.com / acts of kindness / acts of kindness big impact study. So the Nice News had this article. I think it was published in a reputable journal in psychology or maybe in social work. I don't know, but it was a study where they studied people who did little acts of kindness, and what they found is that the person who did the act of kindness in general as a group will underestimate the impact that their small acts
Mm.
of kindness had on someone else. And what they discovered is that the act of kindness, however small, its impact on the receiver was much bigger than people anticipate. And the
Huh.
reason is partly because the person experiencing the act of kindness, they're not judging it by the act itself. They're judging it based upon the surprise and delight they have
Oh.
from that experience. So it's
Yeah.
not like a smile that was, or a compliment or whatever that was, you can consider as a small act of kindness. It's more about the way it suddenly and intensely surprised them and created a
Mhm.
shift in their attitude that day
Mhm.
or in how they
Mhm.
perceived life that day.
Mhm.
So that's a really great article. And I think that it's something for us to think about, that no small act of kindness is small, that it does
Mhm.
have a huge impact on people.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Wow. It's like it's one of those things where it it gives you such appreciation for everything that any kind of positive experiences incorporates into it, that's needed
Mm-hmm.
for any kind of positive healing moment or experience or
Mm-hmm.
hangout or party or
Mm-hmm.
podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was thinking about when, as you were just at the very end there, when you were talking about no act of kindness is small, really. Like, even
Mm-hmm.
small ones are not really small.
Right.
They have impact.
Mm-hmm.
In the book I'm reading, A Course in Miracles,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way that the author, or whoever, I don't even know who it is at this
Mm-hmm.
point. It might just
Mm-hmm.
be the Holy Spirit speaking directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that they're all miracles are the same to the energy, the life energy that allows them to happen. That no no a miracle may seem in form like it is, oh, I can't believe this could happen, or a miracle may just be that the sun is rising, but the miracles themselves, to the universe, to the being, to the love that makes them possible, is no more difficult than any other, and they're all so valuable and so important for the healing of humanity. um and it
Mm-hmm.
and it it makes me, it's almost like, as you were speaking, I was like hearing that, like, an act of kindness is a miracle. Like that, what a beautiful thing. It's like, an act of kindness is like a flower blooming in the field. And that, why would a flower blooming in this field, or a flower blooming in this field, be any less of a flower blooming? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why would it be any less important as an act of kindness?
Well, thank you
um
for explaining that.
yeah.
I've always kind of wondered about some of the words in that particular book, not being
Yeah.
able to understand it very well.
Yeah, it's dense. It is a lot.
Yeah,
You can't hang on too tightly to any particular word. That's what I've been learning.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I wanted to end with some acknowledgement too of miracles and the goodness and small
Mm.
acts of kindness that we receive from the divine universe. I feel like a lot of times the divine universe, the benevolent backdrop from which we come and from which we will return, this beautiful spiritual energy that runs our bodies without us thinking, oftentimes doesn't search or need any kind of gratitude on our part. But it's still, I think it's, for me, on a daily basis, I do find so many wonderful events that could not have happened without help
Mm.
from the divine universe.
Mhm.
And talking about, little acts of kindness with a big impact, I do believe that some of those acts of kindness come from directly from the divine universe. And they have a huge impact on us, whether we uh, know it's there or not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Mm.
thank you so much for sharing your spiritual journey. I really loved
Yeah.
listening to
Yeah.
everything. Um, one thing I wanted to finish up with is when I was talking about the appearance changing and my attitude towards that what happened was all of the different people who in my past had complimented me actually finally got received into my heart.
Oh. Oh,
I was like able to receive it. And I was like, oh, so that's how it felt.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's eventually will happen. That sometimes we throw out a lot of goodness into the world, and maybe the people that you want to receive it may not be able to receive it for decades until
Yeah.
finally they are. And
And then
once
they
they're
are.
ready, it will all go to
Wow.
them, and all go to them, or all go to us, or you know,
Yeah.
it will all
All
get to
one.
the place where it's meant to go.
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah,
that's beautiful. What a
yeah,
wonderful way to end. Well, thank you so much for having me and listening to my story and asking me great questions. This was
yeah.
really
I
fun.
really appreciate your time. And for those people who have stayed until the very end of our podcast, I want to thank you for listening. And I hope you've enjoyed it and gained from it and found it uplifting. And I hope that you will know of your worth as you go forward in your day, and that your acts of kindness will always be not only helpful in big ways to other people, but also will heal you as well in the process. So um, the positivity that we send out into the universe is definitely rewarded. So I want to I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you will come back the next time we create a podcast for you. Jack and I are really grateful for the audience that we have. We're really grateful for all the downloads that we have, and I hope that you'll go ahead and share it also to those that who will benefit. So if you want to reach Jack in the Way, or Jack, go to his
Yeah, that's
website,
it.
jackintheway.me. And
Yeah.
for me, you can reach me at holisticspsychiatrist.com. My website has everything on it, including my podcast. So I hope you can go there and enjoy that as well. Thank you so much for your attention today. And we will be back soon. Take care and have a lovely week. Bye-bye.